Alright, good day everybody. We're going to do a somewhat lengthy video today on using and exporting your gradebook out to Excel to start getting ready for our grade submission process. For those who haven't done it, it can be quite a bit tricky and cumbersome, so we're going to kind of go through it, starting with prepping your desktop with folders to create some landing spots for all your documents, such as your posted grades, your raw scores, any kind of PDFs you may need to submit, like attendance rosters and whatnot. Then we're going to look at exporting out of Canvas, cleaning up your spreadsheet, and then saving it as a PDF so that you can send it all over to whoever needs to submit your grade. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing, we're looking at your desktop, and so when I say that you want to create a landing spot, what I'm talking about is creating folders on your desktop. So let's go ahead and create a folder by right-clicking and then choosing New Folder, and we're going to call this in what I'd make it to make it easier. You want to call it something like Spring 2020, and what we want to do is we want to go ahead and open up this folder now. And inside this folder, we want to create a folder for each of our CRNs. And so, for instance, I'm going to call this CRN 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But these would be the names. You would label these the CRNs of each course that you are teaching. So, for instance, if you have 13656, 17522, just name it. Name these folders each of those CRNs. So it kind of gives you a place to drop those files later on. We want to do this first. So go ahead and create folders, and you can use this button up here, or you can just right click and hit New Folder. And what we want to do, again, just do this, and let's just call it 67890. Again, these are just fictitious numbers. Make sure you label them the proper CRN. So once you have your folders created, we want to go ahead and just close off this window. Just remember where you put them. We went ahead, and I would suggest putting them on your desktop so they're easy to locate, easy to find. Again, you have your folder called Spring 2020, and once you have that set up, go ahead and close this window out, and then let's go ahead and go into Canvas, and we're going to work in our CRN. I won't be able to use a live class because it will broadcast student information. I don't want to violate any kind of FERPA laws with student identification and grades. So we're going to use an OpenStax sandbox, which is one of my sandboxes I use. And what we want to do is we want to go to our grades section. We want to look at our grade book, and you'll see that we have grades for all of our students, and these are just fictitious students and fictitious names. But you'll see that all of our students have grades, and I would suggest that any cells that you have that are empty, go ahead and put a 0 in there so that Canvas can go ahead and correctly calculate the student's overall grade that they see in their grade book. By keeping these blank, it may or may not change their overall grade. But we want to make sure that Canvas sees any blank spots as an actual 0 for missed assignments. So once you have your grade book in here ready to go, and like I said, you can move these around, but how you organize them in this grade book may or may not be the way they actually export out into Excel. So to export, what we want to do is we want to go up here and look at the Actions tab. So you have grade book, you have View, and you have Actions. We're going to go ahead and export this out. We're going to choose Import or Export. We want to make sure we choose Export. And you can see that I previously exported out this grade book, and it will always provide you your your latest export. And as soon as we hit Export here, then tonight's export will become the most recent export. So you can see now it's changed to May 11th, 2020 at 7:32 p.m. And if you wanted to go back to this, you could go ahead and click on this again, and it would create a second export. So we hit the export. You saw a little window pop up here saying exported started. And if you're using Chrome, again, Firefox and or Safari and or Edge will have different versions of this. But Chrome will put that download here in the corner, and it will give you the date it will give you the time. So just make sure this is the correct one, and once it is, you can go ahead and just open it up, and you will eventually have Excel open up for you, and you'll see that you have your student names and your different columns and categories and all the different grades. So at this point, you have a grade book, but it's not very clean. It's not very easily readable, so to speak. What we want to do first is go ahead and maximize all these columns so that you can identify each of the different assignments and grades a little bit easier. So go ahead and place your mouse up here on the A where you see the down arrow form. And we want to click our left mouse button and hold it down so that it highlights the column, and we want to go ahead and drag it all the way across, all the way until we get to the very end, and go ahead and let go of your mouse button. And then in between any two of your columns, you want to go ahead and place your cursor, and you'll see that it changes to this black crossbar. What we want to do is go ahead and make sure we're staying on that line, and we want to double click our left mouse button, and it will self-justify each column to the widest point of the widest text. And so it kind of makes it a little bit easier to identify the different assignments, different grades and whatnot. So what we want to do next though is you start having these duplicate columns of what we look at. They say read only. We don't need those. We don't want those. What we're going to do is same thing, left click and highlight the column, and then just drag all the way over, and then we want to go ahead and hit the delete button and delete all those columns, or at least the information in those columns. And so what we're left with now is just all of our assignments and their grades, student names, and also we get 4 columns right here that you may or may not need. I don't use them. They're not really worth anything. We want to go ahead and highlight each of these columns as well by left clicking and dragging in the letters, not in the actual cells, but in the letters, and highlight every column in these 4 columns. And instead of hitting the delete button, what we're going to do now is right click up here where there's that black arrow forms, and we're going to hit delete. And that gets rid of those 4 columns. So now we have a much cleaner spreadsheet. We have a much cleaner looking, easier to read spreadsheet. And what I usually do as well is go ahead and highlight them all again. And I'm going to center justify everything to make it just a little bit easier to read. Again, this is optional. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but again, I like to do it to make it look neat, nicer, and cleaner. Center justify everything. So everything is now centered in the cells, but it's still just a bit wide. We still have to scroll too much to view our entire spreadsheet. So what we're going to do now is highlight this first row that says student. So make sure again you put your cursor up on the number 1, and we left click to highlight the entire row. Then we're going to move up here to our orientation button, which is right below review. But you should see this little letters A and B with a diagonal arrow. We want to go ahead and click on this. We want to choose rotate text up. And this will basically force all the text in that row to rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. So now you can see that all of our text in these rows have moved to the 12 o'clock position. And what we're going to do again to self-justify these or self-widen these columns, click up here, hold, and go all the way across. And we want to go ahead and put our cursor up here again. Make sure we see the black crossbars and double click. And so now you can see that we have a very condensed, compressed, easily readable spreadsheet with only the information that we need to calculate overall grades. So how you calculate your grades completely up to you, but I use a point system. And so what I would do is put total, and then I'm going to do final. And I'm going to tell the system to go ahead and add up using the formula and auto sum all the points that were available in the class, which was 600 points. Then we're going to copy and we're going to paste that cell's formula to the ones below it. We hit paste, and now we get their point totals. And again, I'm going to go ahead and self-justify this column by double-clicking on the lines between cells. And so now you can see that we have point totals for the entire class, but then how we get our final. So our final is going to be that total divided by 6. It's 600 points. So we're going to auto sum again and divide by 6. Again, this is just my way of grading it. Yours may be different. Copy and paste. So now we have overall grades for the entire course. 88, 86, 88, 84, 82, 84, 82. So not too bad. Again, you need to go ahead and include your grading scheme minus total divided by 6. So it's a total amount of points divided by 6. So at this point, you now have a nice, clean spreadsheet. Anybody can look it up. Anybody can find it. And they can identify the students and their overall grades in the course. They can identify individual grades for individual assignments. They know how the overall grade was calculated. And so in here, what we're going to do is save this file. File, save as. And we're going to browse to that folder we created earlier on our desktop. So we're going to scroll to our desktop. And we're going to look for that folder we labeled Spring 2020 or SP 2020. And we're going to look for the CRN. And we're just going to assume this CRN is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But just make sure that the CRN you drop this file in matches up to your folder. And we're going to make sure that we change the file type or save as type to Excel workbook. And we're going to go ahead and hit the save button. And so now we've saved this spreadsheet as an Excel spreadsheet. We're going to go ahead and go check what we've done. Let's go back to our folder, open it up, and now you can see we now have that spreadsheet in there. And so we know that it was saved on May 11th, 2020 at 7:40 p.m., which is the current time. And so that is our spreadsheet. So let's go back to that again. Let's go ahead and create a PDF of this file. So once you have it all cleaned up, once you have it saved as an Excel spreadsheet, what we're going to do is go ahead now is create a PDF of the same thing. We're not going to do the save as. We're going to do the print option. And by using the print option, we're going to tell it we're going to print a copy of this, but not to an actual printer, to the PDF file. So we're going to use the Microsoft Print to PDF. And you can see that we only have a certain, it kind of gets blocked off a little bit, and it leaves a little remnants over here. But we're going to adjust the scaling, and we're going to choose scaling, and we're going to hit fit sheet on one page. And so then it's going to fit everything on one page, and you can change it to landscape or portrait mode, whatever you want to do. No difference in either one, but it depends on how big your class is and how many grades you have. You may want to change the orientation. But the idea is you want to fit it all on one sheet so that whoever needs to go and find your grades, if need be, only has to look at one sheet. So now we have it saved. Now we have it formatted properly. We want to go ahead and hit print. And then say, hey, where do you want to save this file? We want to save it in our desktop, in our Spring 2020 folder, in our CRN. We want to call this raw scores, if I can spell tonight. And you can, down here you can see that it is in the PDF format. We hit save, and it's kind of going to go ahead and like virtually print that file out to a PDF file. And so now you can see we have our Excel spreadsheet and we have our PDF. What we want to do now is go ahead and just double check it. And again, one page. Now, we don't want that. We see that everything's on one page. Easy to find, easy to read. We know what our overall grade total is. And so we know exactly what we're looking for. It's easy, it's simple, and it's clean. So let's go ahead and close that out. So what we want to do next is, once we have these two, is go into our PeopleSoft account, and we want to request our attendance roster. And we want to go ahead and go to our Faculty Center. We want to go find our class, and this should be fairly common knowledge. We're going to look for that. Again, we don't have this because it was a fake CRN or fake class as a sandbox. But what you're looking for is that third icon that says roster summary grade sheet. And when you click on that, let's go ahead and use this one. You're going to get a message saying, hey, we sent it to your email. And eventually what you want to do is go ahead and save that file you receive in this folder as well. And that should be all that you would need. And let me see if I can find an old one. Oh, I don't have one. Never mind. Let's go back over here. And eventually you get all three of those folders, all three of those files in that folder. And at this point, you would have everything you need. So let's go ahead and delete this one real quick. And so what we want to do then is once we're done, once we have all classes done, let's say you have 5 classes, you have all of them done, what we want to do then is create a compressed file or compressed folder of this one, your Spring 2020. And that allows us to create one file that we can email or transfer to whoever needs to submit the assignment, submit the grades for us. So what we want to do is highlight the folder we're working in. We want to right click and we want to hit send to compressed zipped folder. And it's not going to let me do it tonight. Don't know why. Let's try it again. Let's see. No errors. But what it should look like would be Spring 2020. And if that works properly, you get a folder or a file called Spring 2020. And you can see it has this zipper-like graphics on it, which means it's a compressed file or compressed folder. And so with that one folder, you can email it to whoever you need to email it to, and they would have copies of all of your grades, all of your scores, your final calculations. And so that is a brief walkthrough of submitting and exporting grades. I can't do the submit process yet because there are no grades to submit yet. But the idea is to export your grades from Canvas, clean up your spreadsheet, and compress them down. And so again, if there's any questions, concerns, comments, please feel free to email or please feel free to leave comments and I will address them as soon as I can. But until then, have a great night and enjoy the rest of your day.